Greetings Exiles! In today's video we are going to go over my take on ward loop builds. Now ward loop builds allows you to automate the activation of a bunch of spells via multiple cast when damage taken gems. Casters are generally squishy, but now you don't have to worry about that as this build freezes everything around you while you are moving. More like a cold version of Righteous Fire. So, as usual we begin with our ascendancy. We are an occultist. First we take Void Beacon. This node reduces both cold and chaos resistance of all nearby enemies. It also deletes their life regen along the way. Pretty straightforward. Next we go for Frigid Wake. This node makes us immune to all cold elements and grants us 15% more damage to it. It also freezes everything around us including unique enemies every few seconds. Next we take Profane Bloom. This node is the reason why clearing with Occultist is top tier, making nearby enemies deal chaos damage to everything around them when they die, as long they are affected by a curse, which we are running as an aura in this build. Last but not least we got Forbidden Power. This node grants us increased damage and area of effect per power charge we have. It's also responsible for generating all of our power charges and increasing their maximum count by 1. But with that being said, we are done with our ascendancy. Now let's talk about passive tree. We have one that focuses on cold damage, flask nodes like increased flask charges gained, critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier for spells, reduced mana cost of skills, and life. We also have one Voices large cluster jewel setup. We mainly use this one to branch off into 3 different medium cluster jewels. The first one adds as many small flask effect duration nodes as possible. This jewel also provides us with 3% increased flask charges gained per node, and of course 35% increased effect. And yes, it is mandatory. Our second medium jewel adds more flask related nodes. These include Fasting and Special Reserve. Last but not least we got one area of effect jewel. This one adds the following notables: Vast Power and Titanic Swings. Finally, don't forget to take the 30% increased global defense staff mastery node, as it is required for this build. But with that being said, we are done with our passive tree and its cluster jewels. Now let's talk about items. For our weapon, we are using a rare staff with +1 to maximum power charges implicit. On it we have rolled another +1 maximum power charge, and then awakened it with socketed gems are supported with level 10 power charge on critical strike elder mod. After that we multi-mod it into spell damage and +2 level of socketed support gems. It's crucial that you try and get an identical staff to mine. It's not hard to craft, and getting the +2 level of socketed support gems is important for our specific gem setup. On the other hand, you could just go with Cane of Kulomak unique staff that has both increased cold damage and +3 level of socketed support gems. It will do the trick just fine, but it will give you slightly less damage. Our next item is a rare helm with at least 600 ward. It's very important that you try and hit the ward numbers that I'm going to mention in this video, as they are essential at maintaining our health while sustaining the self-inflicted damage by our loop. Aside from ward, you are looking for as much life and resistances. Crafting something like this is going to be as simple as chaos orbing a good ward base until you hit a good ward value. After that you just multi-mod into whatever you are missing. Same thing applies to our gloves. Here we are looking for a minimum of 400 ward. Now you could try and go for Aisling in order to hit some nice damage modifiers like increased critical strike chance alongside increased elemental damage if you have dealt a crit recently. Just don't forget to roll both cold exposure and chance to unnerve enemies on hit on your gloves using the new Eldritch currencies. They are easy to roll and extremely powerful in terms of damage potential. Next, for our boots, we are also looking for a minimum of 400 ward. This time however we ditched life in order to get movement speed instead. Now once we were done with our prefixes, we decided to lock them up and then reforge until we got a decent resistance roll. After that I just crafted even more resistances. Try to balance your chaos resistance around -30% specifically, or -20% if you are above 4k life. This is very important. Also remember to roll 7% increased cooldown recovery rate either of ward implicit on your boots. Lastly, try to enchant your boots with flat cold damage if you have been hit recently lab enchant. Next, for our rings, we got one Heartbound Loop unique ring catalysted up with physical damage catalysts. This item is the reason why this build functions in the first place. It let us take 420 physical damage every time one of our minions die, and we do summon 3 minions with summoned skeletons, which results in over 1000 physical damage taken. which is more than enough to trigger a level 1 cast when damage taken setup linked with Forbidden Rite. And Forbidden Rite will trigger the rest of this build with its self-inflicted chaos damage. This is why you cannot invest fully into chaos resistance. If Forbidden Rite damage gets reduced too much, the loop will not happen. More details on that will be discussed in the gems section. Anyway, for our second ring, we got any ring with +1 to maximum power charges. This can either be a rare or a unique ring. It doesn't really matter. We are using a precursor for this occasion specifically, as it can roll other useful power charge modifiers like 1% increased movement speed per power charge. Next, for our belt, we got one with 20% reduced flask charges used and 20% increased cooldown recovery rate. It's essential that you have both mods and both roll to perfection at 20%. It doesn't work with anything lower than this. Aside from these two mods, we have life, resistances, and crafted damage. Try to enchant your belt with 50% increased critical strike chance against enemies unnerved by your hits, as we do have that as an implicit on our gloves. Our next item is a rare grasping mail chest with 100% increased global defenses. This mod is essential for this build to function. Aside from it, we have life and resistances. Just make sure to roll flasks gains 2 charges every 3 seconds with your Eldritch currencies. This is a tier 2 Searing Exarch mod, thus you will have to use Orb of Conflict a couple of times to get it right. Last but not least, we got a rare amulet with as much quality of life modifiers like increased movement speed and as much area of effect as possible. Having big area of effect is good when you are dealing area damage while moving. Make sure to anoint the last power charge on your amulet, as we could not afford to spend passive points and allocate it manually on our passive tree. And yeah, that was it for our items. Now let's talk about gems that goes inside of them. Make sure that you pay attention whenever I mention a specific gem quality type or level, as not following my specific setup is going to break your entire build. You have been warned. So, for our main 6 link that goes in our weapon, we have level 21 Ice Nova, level 21 Glacial Cascade, level 19 Divergent Cast when damage taken with 20% quality, Divergent Inspiration, Awakened Cold Penetration, and level 4 Empower. Make sure to use level 18 Divergent Cast when damage taken instead if you are using Cane of Kulumak staff with +3 to level of socketed support gems. Our second 6 link setup contains level 20 Ice Spear, level 20 Freezing Pulse, level 20 Divergent Cast when damage taken with 20% quality, Divergent Inspiration, Arcane Surge, and Power Charge on Critical Strike. You can use level 21 gems here, but then you have to use level 21 Divergent Cast when damage taken, which is really expensive. Our next gem setup triggers the whole loop of this build. It starts with level 11 Anomalous Summon Skeletons, level 5 Cast when damage taken, level 1 Anomalous Minion Speed with 20% quality, level 3 Less Duration Support with 20% quality. Again, it's extremely important to have the same gem specifications and level as me, otherwise it's highly unlikely that your loop is going to start properly. Our next gem setup contains level 1 Forbidden Rite, level 1 Cast when damage taken, level 25 Righteous Fire, and Phase Run. Last but not least, we got a 4 link aura setup, starting with Hatred, Herald of Ice, Frostbite, and Blasphemy support. If you feel like having mana issues, you can drop Herald of Ice and use Clarity instead. But with that being said, we are done with our gems. Now let's talk about jewels. We are only using unique jewels in this build, starting with our Watcher's Eye. It has both 1.8% base crit chance and 15% cold penetration while affected by Hatred. It goes without saying, if you are on a budget, then just getting base crit chance while affected by Hatred is more than enough. Next, we got 3 2 Dust unique jewels. It is extremely important that the combined reduced skeleton duration roll on all 3 of these jewels should not exceed or be lower than a total of 58%. Reducing our skeletons durations makes them expire faster, which triggers our ring modifier more frequently, which is the one responsible for starting all of our cast when damage taken gems, and thus beginning the loop. Aside from these, we got one Brutal Restrain Timeless jewel that mentions Balbala specifically. This jewel will convert all nearby keystones into the Traitor. The Traitor grants us 4 flask charges for every missing flask every 5 seconds. Why do we need this alongside other flask modifiers in this build? Simply put, we are trying to maintain 100% uptime on Uroth Resolve unique flask. This one prevents ward from breaking after taking a hit, as long as it's active. And ward is the main defensive layer against self-inflicted damage of Forbidden Rite, which is used to trigger our main 6-link setups. Thus, the name of the game is trying to sustain this flask at any cost. Make sure that your flask has 28% quality and that it's enchanted with reactivation at the end of its duration. Last but not least, we have one Survival Secrets unique jewel, which reduces the downside of Urwath Resolve, effectively doubling our ward pool. Overall, we are looking to have 1600 minimum ward while the flask is active, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so how do we start the loop? Step number 1. Get any 2 random one-handed weapons with Essence of Insanity mod and then place them on your spare weapon slots. Step number 2. Activate your ward flask. Step number 3. Weapon swap, wait a few seconds, and then activate Righteous Fire. And there you go. You will have to repeat step number 2 and step number 3 every time your loop stops. After that, the game becomes a walking simulator. Now I know that this is not one of Path of Exile's most simplest builds. That's why if you still have questions and maybe need some help with it, then my friend Captain Lance has a thoroughly explained video on this build and ward loop mechanics. Thus make sure to give him a visit, link in the description. But with that being said, we are done with our ward loop build for this league. If you guys have enjoyed this video, then you know what to do. Like and subscribe, and maybe even let me know your thoughts in the comment section. My name is Phoenix and I will see you all in the next video.